Hey traders, welcome back to the FX YouTube channel. Hope everyone's doing good today. In today's video, I'll do a quick trade recap. I was asked by a few people to explain a little more how I got into the buys yesterday. And then I'll review the recent price action and analyze the markets to give some ideas where price may want to go today. So let's get into the charts and have a look in more detail. So starting with the trade recap, honestly it wasn't anything fancy. I did try to get into longs from this flip zone, but as you can see, price didn't want to reverse from here. It continued to push to the downside, and as it was pushing down, even though we started to have some reactions in this area, I wasn't interested. I wanted to see at this point a tap into this demand. So eventually that did happen. So the way I was looking at it is, if this demand doesn't hold, then my entire narrative was at that point would have been completely wrong, because I could see this demand going and then price just continuing to the downside. So that's how I was looking at it at the time. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, the reason why I wanted this demand to hold is because we had this entire area as technically a demand zone, but this was actually the last unmitigated area. This area has already been mitigated. You can see that spike that came down to mitigate the lower demand. So I wasn't interested in that. I was thinking, if demand's going to hold, it's going to hold here. So I was quite aggressive in my entry on this one. The moment I saw price impulsively start to push up, I was already thinking this could be a reversal zone, and then as it continued up and reacted off the last point of supply, I just entered on that pullback, on the first pullback, even before the break. So that was my first trade. So once we started to see that first sign of strength, tapping into the last point of supply, pulling back into the extreme demand, that's where I entered. And price continued to play around for several hours, but ultimately it did show a lot of signs of strength. Didn't break this high, but as you can see, it continued to break this entire range. And when price came back down again, actually I took a nap, so I didn't even see this. But then it pushed back up, played around, consolidated a little more. And then when I saw the price coming down back into the extreme, I was thinking maybe this was the last liquidation before pushing to the upside. So once we had that first push to the upside, not much, but some signs of strength. Demand held, and then it started to push up again, and when I saw it starting to push up again with demand holding, I actually set a buy stop, and then right after that I just entered, and then sure enough price went right through my entry. Unfortunately, that was the last mitigation, because it never came anywhere near that after that. But then we had this mess over here at New York Open. To be completely honest, I was quite confident with my narrative, and I said to myself, I mean, if it's going to come down and stop me out, then once again I'm wrong, and I would have accepted that, but I didn't take any profits. I left it full volume because I was expecting this to at least go back to supply. So I actually got off the charts at this time. I just went to bed and laid down. But then when I started to get alerts, after it broke this range, I came back and had a look, and actually was quite happy with what I saw. So that was really it. I mean, like I said, nothing fancy on this entry. I was just following my expectation for the order flow, based on the analysis that I provided during the weekend video, and it played out quite well. Like I said, I wasn't expecting it to come so low into demand, but does make sense because there was this unmitigated zone here, especially if it wants to push a lot higher. So anyways, that more or less sums up my trade recap. I would have given another one if my trade, or if I entered the trade, but unfortunately I was preparing the video, and when price came back into my demand, by the time I set up the entry, it actually impulsed up, and by then it was too late. May still get one more pullback, but to be honest, I don't even know if it's gonna push up from here or not. So anyways, let's get back to the daily analysis. So starting with the fundamentals, there's really nothing today. It's actually completely blank. If I go to my FX book, there is some CAD news. Have CAD inflation rate as well as CPI. And even though it's CAD, the impact on CAD can be significant enough to cause the dollar to do some weird things. And obviously if the dollar starts moving around like crazy because of CAD, then it's going to affect all the majors. So be careful about that. The CAD news is 30 minutes after New York Open. And I also have housing starts, which is also 30 minutes after New York Open. I'm not sure if it's going to impact the market. So anyways, let's continue on to DXY. So for DXY, we started out, the market opened here. I was expecting a small pullback and then continuation to the downside. But what had happened is DXY actually pushed up quite high. It actually came, near the top of where it was on Friday, before reversing and coming back down. And unfortunately, at least for my narrative, I'm looking for Euro to continue to the upside, at least until Wednesday. But it's really tough to do. Even though Euro is showing strength, it'll struggle to continue up if DXY keeps showing strong signs of strength, especially during Asia. Right, you can see DXY had two really strong bullish candles, pushing the price to the extreme of supply, before finally it's had a reaction and started to show some signs of weakness, and then gave that last pullback before expanding to the downside. And it broke all the internal liquidity, tapped into demand, and actually had a pretty significant reaction from there. So I don't know, I'm a little worried about this, because the way I'm looking at it is I'm seeing this as a reaction off demand, which will eventually continue to the downside. But after we tapped into that demand, we had such a impulsive move to the upside. Just a little worried that it was just a mitigation and could continue to the upside from here. But anyways, I can see both scenarios playing out. Like I said, I would prefer to have this as a reaction and then eventually continuation to the downside. But like I said, we had that huge reaction off demand. Potentially it may come down and retest and then just moon from there. But again, like I said, it kind of goes against my narrative. So let's just wait and see. Let's move on to EU now. So I'm going to go back to the 4-hour. Just one moment. Let me clear all this crap out so we can see the charts a little better. Okay, so like I said, for Monday, I was expecting continuation during Asia, but instead, we got a small reaction off demand, and then ultimately it just continued to the downside. So you can see, like with DXY, we had 2 strong candles down, pushing price all the way down to lower demand. You can't see it here, but you'll see it on the 15-minute chart. And after tapping into that demand, we started to have some reaction. Price consolidated for a few hours, showed some signs of strength before coming back down for a retest and ultimately pushing to the upside. So you can see the push to the upside. It broke supply. It also broke, once again, the entire range, the previous high as well. Tapped into daily imbalance, but there's really not so much else above preventing it from continuing to the upside all the way to the 4-hour imbalance and the supply at the extreme, which is my first target actually. This is where I'd like to see price to go to. And in terms of the schematic, even though we had that pullback, I mean, it doesn't change the schematic at all. All it did is move the last point of supply or last point of support from here down to here. But it's completely intact. Now if we can get that continuation to the upside, we may get that push all the way to the daily supply and 4-hour imbalance. So let's zoom in a little and go down to the 15-minute time frame. So just let me go to the left a little more. So yeah, you can see how during Asia we actually had a liquidation to the upside before starting the move to the downside. When I saw this break up here, I really thought it was just going to push up from here, but instead that was one more sweep before reversing and pushing the price down. And then when price came into this demand area, I actually started to look for longs, but as you can see, that didn't go so well as the price continued further to the downside. And like I said, this was a 15-minute demand zone that I was monitoring for the trades, and as you can see, there is further demand below, but as you can see, this candle right here, it came down, mitigated everything. So I didn't see this as an area that I was looking for price to go to. This is actually the last unmitigated zone. So I was thinking if it's gonna hold to continue the upside, it's gonna be from here. And sure enough, we had that reaction from here, and then one last mitigation to the downside, to the extreme, showing some signs of strength after, before coming down one last time and then pushing to the upside. Then it was a little messy during New York because it did come down quite a bit, but ultimately it did continue to push to the upside. And this was actually quite late in New York, where we had that last push up near the top of supply before the market ended. And then when the market turned over, it continued to the upside, broke the supply, and then it was right before Japan Open where we had that impulsive move to the upside. And we've taken a lot of liquidity. And then started a pullback. So pullback is expected after taking so much liquidity, but is this just a pullback or is it a reversal? That's the big question. But for me, my bias, I mean, you know my bias, I'm looking at this as just a pullback. So as of now, we already had a pullback. We've already seen some signs of strength following this pullback as well. And I already tried to enter a trade, but missed it. But if it does come back down, I'll probably give it a try to enter again. But honestly, I'm not sure if this is the area that's going to hold or if it's going to come down lower, because we also have an unmitigated zone down here, which is actually also a flip zone. So as you can see, price did come into supply, reacted off of it, created this demand area, but this has been mitigated. So that's why I'm looking at this area and potentially all the way over to here as well, as a potential area that price may come to before reversing and pushing to the upside. Not sure if Asia will continue to push the price up before London. We have nearly 3 hours before the London session starts, so there is a chance that maybe this demand holds and it starts pushing up before London session, but at the same time it could continue down a little further as well. And then I'm hoping that today London session will give us a push to the upside instead of consolidating or pushing the price down. So we'll just have to wait and see. Like I said, if price comes down to this area and retests demand again, I won't enter at the top of this demand, but if it comes down to the lower end, then I will enter our trade, as we've already shown some signs of strength. This is a 15-minute chart, so this is the last point of supply on the 15-minute, but on the 1 minute we've already broken the last point of supply, and I'm willing to take the risk and enter a trade. It won't be high risk. I'll enter with low risk anyways because I have 2 running trades as it is. Just want to see if I can get a little more profits if it does decide to push up from here. And at the same time, like I said, this area, if it holds, could potentially be a good area to look for longs. But like I said, timing wise, I'm not sure it makes the most sense. I wouldn't be surprised if we ultimately take me out of my long, come down further into this demand area before shifting and then coming back to the upside. I'm not really so interested in the areas below because, like I said, it appears to be all mitigated already. Yeah, there's some imbalance as well, but I'm not so sure it'll go there. I mean, considering it's Tuesday today, I would think that we would see more continuation without like any big pullbacks before continuing on. So yeah, that about sums it up. I'm only looking at the bullish scenario today, so pullbacks to take it to the upside. If it does show signs of reversal, then I'll probably just close my trades and then just see what happens. But ultimately, I would like to hold them and see if we can get closer to the 4-hour imbalance and the 4-hour supply above. Okay, anyways, that sums up my analysis in today's video. Hopefully you guys found it useful. Let me know your thoughts on the price action for today by leaving a comment below. And as a reminder, if you found value in this video, please be sure to click the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And have a wonderful day trading today, and looking forward to seeing you for the next one. See you soon. Peace.
Hey, you made it to the very end. Thanks for that. If you could do me one more favor and click the like button and subscribe if you haven't already, it'll allow the YouTube algos to kick in and help this channel grow. Thanks again. Cheers.